I've been using Copilot for a while now because in business, if you don't adapt, you get left behind. When I asked Copilot what it had in common with Halloween, among a number of answers, it said just like Halloween, costumes transform people into different characters, and Copilot transforms your work experience by automating tasks and boosting productivity. I think we can all agree AI is a little bit cheesy on its response, but we can probably all agree as well that it's definitely on its way. Today, VITG with our Microsoft specialist partner from Dicker Data and our keynote speaker, Andrew Young, are excited to give us a closer look at Microsoft's next step in AI, Copilot. I'm Nathan Gardner. I'm the Head of Business Development for the Virtual IT Group, and it's my pleasure today to be your host, and thanks for joining us. First launched on the 1st of November 2023, a year ago tomorrow, Copilot is Microsoft's own AI assistant, designed to transform the way we work. Copilot's designed to seamlessly work with Microsoft 365 apps like Word, Excel, and Teams, automating routine tasks to boost efficiency, adapting and improving as it's used to match our personalities, learning what and how we do what we do. As a thank you for joining us all today, one of today's lucky attendees that signs up for our Copilot readiness assessment during the event will be the recipient of a $100 Prezi voucher, and the winner will be contacted after the event. Today, we're lucky to be joined by our keynote speaker, Andrew Young, who's recently received the accolade of Microsoft's MVP award in the security category for Microsoft Intune. Among other things, Andrew has a passion for embracing and delivering digital transformation solutions to enhance the quality of modern work, with a focus on all things Microsoft 365. In today's session, Andrew will introduce us to Copilot, teach us how to use it to maximise potential, to match evolving industry demands, and show how we can collaborate better internally with Copilot using Microsoft's tool stack, and the best practices that will ensure the security of your organisational data. Following this, Virtual IT Group's own principal consultant, Will Thomas, will share some early success stories and items that need to be considered when using Copilot in your workplace. I'll throw it over to you, Andrew.
Thanks, Nathan. Andrew Young here from Dicker Data, Modern Workplace Pre-Sales Specialist. As Nathan mentioned, I have a MVP award in security. I've got that in January, start of this year. And part of that, I've been running the Adelaide Microsoft IT Pro community for the last 5 years or so. And I'm mostly active on LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out and connect. There's a QR code to my profile there. So let's get to it. So obviously we're all here to talk about AI and Copilot, and I guess from the statistics on the screen here, I actually looked back into this, and that's a figure from October 4 years ago. So that's well before any of this boom in generative AI. So the last year and so also, it was ChatGPT appeared out in the wild, and all of a sudden everyone's talking about Gen AI and all sorts of different AI services out there. So Microsoft partnered with OpenAI, who created this GPT model, and they've released Copilot, which is their version of this AI service. So after 10 years of everyone talking about digital transformation, we're now in this field of digital evolution. So we're getting these new tools that are changing every day. And a lot of businesses understand now that adopting these AI tools will get them that advantage in the marketplace and stay ahead of the curve, or at least closely behind that curve. So as an organization, and you're looking to adopt AI, there are some considerations from the beginning. So what are you looking to achieve from using this AI service? Can you identify your menial tasks, things that are time consuming, repetitive, anything that you don't want to do or could be automated? That's where AI could come in handy. And then having a look through your organization and seeing what kind of skill sets you have. Are there people who are already using AI, for example? They could be your IT champions. And do you have a plan around information protection and security, being able to protect your assets in your organization? And at the same time, have you got the resourcing around being able to adopt, drive those change management campaigns and support your staff once you do have AI in the business. So with Microsoft, they have their own set of productivity tools. So the foundational productivity that they talk about is obviously M365. So the Copilot for M365 is what we're going to be focusing on today. But from an adoption point of view, we want to start introducing the Microsoft Copilot. So the web version of Copilot per se, which was formerly known as Bing Chat or Bing Chat Enterprise, when you sign in with your work account. So work account being an M365 logon, you will get commercial data protection, and this protects your interactions with Copilot. So the data that you input, the conversations with Copilot, that's protected in that instance of the chat. So it's never going to be used to train the AI, it never leaves that chat interface. Okay. And with today's running theme of Halloween, we've got this popular meme here where Fred from Scooby-Doo is unmasking Copilot, and lo and behold, all this time it was Clippy behind the scenes. It hasn't been, but yeah, it's pretty funny. So next steps, talking about using M365, you want to make sure that you've migrated your information into the cloud. So we're talking file servers and any repos with documents and files into SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, and so on, so that Copilot can then interact and reference these files that are linked to your account. And of course, we want to make sure that we're safe and secure and protected. So permissions, any data labeling, anything to prevent that information from being leaked out from your business. And we'll talk more about that shortly. So quick comparison between the web version or the free version of Microsoft Copilot and Copilot from M365. The free version, as we mentioned, it's the web version. It's going to reference anything on the internet as part of its sources of information. So if you asked a question about the weather, it's going to look around the internet, look for any trends in the past, say, fortnight in weather and so on. So it never uses your prompts to train anything. It's just pulling information in from the internet. And with that commercial data protection I alluded to earlier, that's where the protection comes in. And when you do get a license for Copilot for M365, you get something called enterprise grade level of data protection. And what that means is you're extending what you get from commercial data protection into Microsoft security and compliance tools. And that can be configured to then further enhance and give you that peace of mind when you are playing around with Copilot, that that information isn't going to accidentally be leaked out. And at the same time, across all the applications in M365, you will see that you will have enterprise grade level of protection. So all that interaction, the telemetry that goes on behind the scenes, any that data goes in transit across your application, that's all protected by Microsoft at a base level. And we're talking about graph grounding here. So when we had web grounding with the web-free version, graph grounding, we're talking about the information in your organization. So everything inside your M365 environment, this Microsoft Graph is that backbone that has an idea of all your users, all their files, and everything around who's been collaborating with them. So once you are signed a license, you will start seeing this in use because Copilot accesses what you can access, essentially. And so with those applications you saw there, when you do get a license, Copilot will slowly appear and it'll become part of your experience with those applications. So the next step from then on, after you've rolled out Copilot, is how do you get more out of it? So you can extend Copilot from Microsoft 365 or build your own custom autonomous Copilot agents using Copilot Studio. So that's outside of the scope of this conversation, but it's the next path on your journey. And just for that price there, it is per user per month, but on an annual commitment. Do reach out to the team at VITG if you'd like more information around that licensing scheme. So back to Microsoft 365. This is the evolution of Office 365, Enterprise Mobility and Security, and Windows 10/11. And with that, we want to recommend these license types at the bottom there with a bare minimum of Business Premium because you will miss out on a lot of those security features above. So we're talking productivity tools from Office 365, unified endpoint management through Intune and so on, and the zero trust concept of having everything explicitly verified. So through conditional access, your identities are protected with MFA, and other signals across M365 are ingested, and you will have that protection from the email level, the document level, and so on. And we haven't talked about it here, but something called Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, which also talks to Microsoft Purview from a compliance point of view. This is a tool that's commonly used to identify and prevent the usage of shadow IT. And you may have heard of that term. It's generally when your users want to use a certain or want to do something and they can't because IT's blocked a certain application. So they'll circumnavigate IT and they'll start using a third-party tool to achieve their goal. And that's often not governed or managed at all. And we're seeing more and more now, people are going out and starting to use the public free versions of AI, and we're coining this shadow AI, and they're putting in information from the company. So a recent example, a few weeks ago, the Child Protection Services in Victoria, one of the agents there, they were working on a case and they started entering details of a child and their case into the free version of ChatGPT. So essentially now that information is being used to train the free version of that large language model, and it's out in the wild. At this point, Child Protection Services Victoria have banned the usage of ChatGPT until further notice, until they have some effective guardrails in place to prevent this from happening again in the future. So with anything to do with security at this level, the team at VITG will definitely be able to assist you with that. So focusing more on that Microsoft graph I alluded to just before, this has all the information around your users, their files, their meetings, their emails, everything around their sharing with other people in the business. And when you get assigned a license for Copilot, something called the semantic index appears on top of that, and it starts building a list out of all the relevancy between the people, the file, and the data, so that when you interact with Copilot, it's going to give you some really enriched responses that are extremely relevant to what you're trying to achieve there. At the same time, that means you're able to surface some really useful information, but in the wrong hands, that can get pretty poorly for the business. So without having any sensitivity labeling or data classification in place, Copilot is able to just browse through and check any files that your user account has access to. So if you haven't set up the right controls from the beginning, that's an inherent risk that you may face later on. So one of the heavily used examples is there's a construction company on the Eastern Seaboard. One of the male employees has access to Copilot, and he's asked Copilot, can you give me a list of all the single women in the business aged between 20 to 30, provide their phone numbers, addresses, and whatnot if available. And because there's no permissioning or sensitivity in place, Copilot checks his user, checks his access, finds that yes, he has access to all this information in the HR folder. So it starts pulling all the PII, the personally identifiable information from those data sources, creates a spreadsheet for him, and he looks through and he says, yes, this is good. And he opens up Outlook, attaches that spreadsheet into an email, and he starts putting in addresses for his mates into the field, and he goes to hit send. Now, everyone's muted, but I can imagine the audible gasps happening around now. So yes, he hit send, but no. This company had data loss prevention policies in place that detected that there was multiple instances of personal identifiable information going on in this attachment, and it stopped that email dead in its tracks, so it couldn't leave the organization, thus protecting the privacy of those women. So at the same time, this also triggers some alarms. So the IT admins, they'll get emails that say this user has tried to do this, and it's been blocked. And the compliance admins can then go in and review the audit logs. So Copilot interactions are part of the audit logging in M365. So they'll be able to run these legal holds, these e-discovery cases, run content searches to go through and see what this user has done with the applications, what they've prompted Copilot with, what Copilot's come back with. And they can take this evidence forward and approach the individual and take any legal or disciplinary action. So that's one of the scarier scenarios that we've heard of without any of the security and compliance in place. And the last point there is talking around retention policies, which also implies disposal policies. Many of you on the call are probably working in the medical fields, legal fields, and you have a requirement to hold data for, say, 5, 7 years or indefinitely. But what happens when you reach the 5 and 7 year mark? Do you archive that data? Do you delete it? And some businesses are required to delete data, which is good. when you start archiving or removing data from Office 365, that means Copilot no longer has access to that information. And we want to do that because then you're providing Copilot the most up-to-date and relevant content, because you don't want it to come back with information that's inaccurate, which could potentially cause other issues. And yeah, you can understand what will happen if you have the wrong information in a proposal that goes out. So again, anything around Microsoft Purview and compliance, reach out to your friendly representative at VITG for more information. So let's jump into the Copilot for M365 a bit more here. So you've got your AI, your large language models, coupled with your data, those relationships that the graph and semantic index has built, and then those familiar applications that you have across the M365 stack. And then you've got optionally access to the internet, so you can enhance those searches, those questions with information from the internet. And at the same time, Copilot will always cite and reference its data that it's gotten that information from. So whether it be URLs to websites or documents within your tenant. And Microsoft is heavily investing in security in AI now. And we can see that they've published these AI principles. So knowing that they are trying to be the most trustworthy AI service provider out there, and there's responsible usage, it's ethical, and everybody's safe and protected. And remember that your data is always your data. It's not going to be used to train the AI model, and it's protected pretty holistically across those tools that they've got and that I've kind of alluded to there. And we're coming to this part here. So I've talked about prompting and interactions with Copilot. Most importantly is knowing how to talk to Copilot. So here's a good example of the 4 key components of a prompt. So providing context to better frame the response, giving any source information or examples of what you want to improve the accuracy of the response, and then setting expectations so that you can achieve the best goal that you want from Copilot. All right, so we're up to the demo side of things. It's always exciting, but remembering Copilot will be across all of the Microsoft 365 apps and services, be it on the desktop or on the web. So let me just change my screen sharing here. Alrighty. Much as love you, Nath, I'm going to have to minimize you. Okay, so we've got here, this is the web version of Copilot, so copilot.microsoft.com. I've signed in with a personal account, so you got my other face here. And with this, you've got some sample prompts you can throw at Copilot. From here, you can see I've logged in. You can change the voices now. So they're using they're using GPT-4o, which starts having these cool new features like being able to talk to Copilot, and soon that'll roll into the Copilot for M365 model as well. And with that, I can start asking questions. So if, for example, we want to talk about Halloween, I will actually, before I do that, let me just double check something. I will include sound so that you will hear what happens here. So with the voice button nowadays, you can talk to it. So let's load it up.
Hey, Andrew. How's life treating you today?
Hey, Copilot. Yeah, it's great. Could you give me a rundown on the history of Halloween in just 2 sentences, please?
Sure. Halloween's origins trace back to the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, where folks lit bonfires and dressed up to ward off spirits. Over time, it evolved, blending with Christian traditions to become the modern celebration we know, filled with costumes, trick-or-treating, and spooky fun.
It's pretty cool, huh? And it's picked up what I've said rather well, as I usually get a pretty iffy transcript, but understanding your language, you could have said some strange things and it would have picked it up. I'm going to now use the text features of the Copilot chat. So here at the VITG company, we want to organize a Halloween event for all the clients for tonight. So let's get Copilot here to create us an image that we can use for an invitation to the clients. And we provided some extra information around the color themes, hex code numbers, and so on. So let's see what happens. And this uses the DALL-E 3 model, which is purely for image generation. So it's got the right colors. It's got some strange text going on, but it's a good start. So you can always iterate on this. You can try again. You can ask it to make certain changes, and each time it'll come back with something slightly different. So the whole generative AI piece, it's non-deterministic, meaning you could ask it the same question, but it won't be the same response every time. So we can keep playing with that until the cows come home and so on. But if you're happy with a certain image, you can keep it. But that is essentially the free web version of Copilot. Notice that it's kept my Movember conversations there. So when you are logged into Microsoft 365 on the web and you access Copilot with your work account, you'll get this interface. So you can toggle between your work and the web experiences. So there you are. It's very, very bland when you're on the web rather. But when you toggle back to work, you start having access to certain things. So what are some of the files you've been working with, being able to create visualizations of any Excel files and so on. And you've also got access to these Copilot agents that I alluded to earlier. So it's all here, and you can access this button down here to start pulling in your files and certain people in the business. But we'll move on with demonstrations. So in Outlook, Copilot in Outlook is just in a few ways. So I've got this email trail happening here with Megan and Nathan at VITG, all part of organizing tonight's Halloween event. So I've got this unread email. I don't want to go through this lengthy conversation of back and forth, so I can click on Summary by Copilot, and it will scan through that email trail and give me those important summary points and any action items that we were discussing. So you can see there, each line there has a reference, so it's like the citation of which line in which email that it's pulled that information from. So I can click on that, and it will jump down to that email in the trail and give me the context around why it came up with that. So let's go back up there. Now, if I want to reply to Megan here, I then have access to Copilot in the ribbon here. So it's the colorful version here. And if you drop it down, you've got an option to draft with Copilot. So if I was feeling a bit lazy or I've got a bit of writer's block going on and I want Copilot to help me write a response. So, help me write a reply. Okay, thanks. All right. So Copilot will understand. Oh, I don't want any high quality context. Let's try that again. The beauty of live demos. All right, there we go. So it's fairly good, and it's pulled in information from the email trail as part of my response so that I don't actually need to go through and type it myself. So it's capturing anything I may have missed. I am human, so there's likely chances that any information is missed as I'm manually replying. So it's captured all that. So if I'm happy, I can keep it. Otherwise, I can always adjust what is in there manually here, or there are some preset prompt edits you can do. So you can adjust your length, adjust the tone, make it into a poem, make it sound like a pirate, and so on. So you can be very creative here, but we'll keep things professional and we'll just keep what we have there. The alternative to this is maybe you do like writing and you just want maybe some advice from Copilot around your language. So you can select the text that you've typed out, and then back here, we can drop it down and choose Coaching by Copilot. And if you use some of those programs or services like Grammarly, you'll find a very similar experience where it will review your text, provide you some different grammar, different language and tones you could use. And it gives you an idea of how the recipient may feel depending on what you've written in there. So being more friendly, more approachable, having nicer smiley language there, and with clarity as well. So if you've got just a run-on sentence or just wall of text, it will help you break down that text into a more sizable chunks, using more effective white space and so on. So you can apply all the suggestions if you like them, or just copy and paste out the bits that you prefer, but we'll leave that for now. Noting that I'm also in the new version of Outlook, so things may look a bit different in the older version, and there's a toggle to go back to it. But I'm pretty sure in the old version that I've tried, there is no coaching ability. You still get the drafting and the summary, but I don't believe coaching is there. And at the same time, if you do notice in the very top here, I've got Copilot in this colored bar, and that is that business chat experience we saw before in the web browser. So you can, is this reasoning over your entire mailbox, or different folders in your mailbox there. So rather than working on an individual email, I've got access to everything else there. Okay, so now we've sent that off, and we're on to the next stages of our Halloween event. So if I want to write a briefing to the marketing team, I'll just grab this, and in the canvas of Word, you've got a Copilot button, and that's how you start creating content within Word with Copilot. So I'll paste this in, create me an event briefing for our marketing team about this event. I'll get rid of the above part, but that's confusing. Okay, so let's hit generate. And for a lengthier document, it may take some time, and you can see the word count goes up, the page number goes up as well as it creates the content for you. I've not provided it any source information here, so it's just made stuff up. So if you had more information in your prompt, or if I wanted to reference a file, it will then bring in information from that file. But at this point, this is a pretty good draft. I've started from nothing on a blank page to 3 pages of fair, good starting point. So I can keep this and adjust it as I need to. I can ask Copilot to change the tone if I needed to, but we'll keep that. And yeah, I guess I'll save that now, and we'll pop it into my community folder here. And off that goes. And at the same time, we've also got Copilot in the ribbon, and this is also the business chat experience. So when you are interacting with Copilot here, it's more about the overall document. You can get it to generate content on the right-hand side here, but you have to manually copy and paste it out. So we can go summarize this document, very generic sample prompt. So there you go. So if you wanted to invite someone into this document to help you collaborate and proofread and vet your information, they could come in and just ask Copilot, summarize the document for me, and they don't necessarily need to read the entire document. If it was a 50-page document, I'd hazard they'd just use Copilot to summarize it and find the key points and ensure they're correct. So that is Word part. Let's test the quickness of the indexing. So we talked about semantic index and the licensing. So when you are assigned a license, it starts building that index out. So it may sometimes take a couple of days. And then the applications may take some time to receive the Copilot experience. But once it's done that the first time, any new files you create, it's only a matter of, I'd say, seconds to minutes for it to index a new file. So we'll test that theory out. So Copilot in PowerPoint here, I want to create a presentation for that briefing to the marketing team. So I can now click that, and I believe I called it event brief. So there it is at the top. So modified just now. So a matter of seconds, it's already indexed that file, and I can start referencing it in my prompts and interactions here. So we'll hit go. Behind the scenes, Copilot's building out the steps, the scripting to actually create your slide deck for you. But all you see is just this conversation on the right-hand side here, and it's doing its thing. It gives you a dot point list of all the main talking points, and after a moment, it creates the entire slide deck for you. So in this instance, it's picked its own color scheme, picked some handy stock images that it has access to, and it's gone out and created the entire presentation for me. Another cool thing is if you expand notes, it also gives you the speaker notes. So here's the bit that it's generated for me, and here is the original content from the Word document. So if you're stuck on creating a presentation, this cuts all that time that you would normally spend figuring out your speaking points, creating these funky images to put into the right place, sorting out formatting and all that. So Copilot can do all that for you, and with updates coming soon, you can have brand management so that you can actually use your corporate branding and logos, and it will respect the color schemes, the sizing, and the formatting for you. So that was pretty cool. So we'll drop the Halloween theme now, and let's move into Teams, because Teams is one of those really useful collaborative tools in Microsoft 365. Here's a recording that we had on Tuesday around Data organizing a November event. So if you've got Teams Premium, you may have seen the intelligent recap before. So essentially all you need is the transcription enabled in a meeting, or preferably you've recorded the meeting so you've got it stored in Microsoft Stream. And once you have the recap running afterwards, it's going to build these notes based on your transcript. So you don't have to worry about taking notes during a meeting, and you can focus on the conversation that's happening. And I can see down here in the meeting notes, you can expand each section, and then you get dot points on all of the individual bits of information that it's pulled that note from. And if you wanted to, you could click onto at the bottom here, you've got follow-up tasks. So Copilot listens in, or it reads your transcript rather, and it picks out anything that sounds like a commitment or responsibility, or anything that's remotely similar to an action item. It will list it here in follow-up tasks. And if anyone's mentioned around that task, it's going to attribute that task to that person. So you can see there's a few tasks assigned to me and some to Kamal in our marketing team. That's really cool. And you've also got things on the left here, so you can see who spoke for when, at what point, and for how long. You can break down into topics that were discussed during the meeting, and then get the timestamps for when those topics were discussed. So that's the intelligent recap side of things. If you have Copilot, you can expand on the right-hand side here and have access to that chat. And for example, if, say, Darren joined this meeting 5 minutes late, he could just ask, recap the first 5 minutes. And because Copilot exists now in the chat as well, so you can pick up anything that's discussed and anything that's in the transcript. If he's come in 5 minutes late, he can ask Copilot for a recap, and Copilot will go, this is what was discussed in the first 5 minutes. Darren can be up to speed, and when he joins the call there, he's ready to go and start discussing the current points. At the same time, if this were an in-progress meeting, you can obviously interact with Copilot and ask it really cool questions, but also at the same time, sometimes we've got events like this where you want to ask a question, but you just don't know what to ask, and someone may have already asked the question that you wanted to ask. So you can ask Copilot things like, what's a good question to ask, and they give you some talking points that you can then grill or heckle the speaker with afterwards. So there's a good example there. So that's mainly the best use case of Copilot in Teams. For any recordings you may have done before you're assigned a license, you can always go out into Stream, generate a transcript, and you can access Copilot in Stream to do the same kind of analysis over a video and find certain quotes and timestamps that you can reference. So that's Teams. And I think the last little demo I want to show you guys is Microsoft Forms, but we'll quickly look into OneDrive. Just quick little dip into here. So Copilot for OneDrive is available now. If you notice, I hover over a file, I get a Copilot icon, so you can summarize, create FAQs, ask questions around that file. And if you select more than one, you can always access Copilot up here and compare the files. So two completely different events. It's going to give a side-by-side comparison of the content. It may take a while. So here we go. You can tell there one has more details than the other, and it's just side by side. So you may find some usage out of this, but just letting you know that it is available in OneDrive now. But into Forms. So my favorite thing is Microsoft Forms. And if you've not heard of Forms, you should really look into it, because you do get to create surveys, quizzes, and so on. In this instance, I'm not going to use a template. I will just go new form. And lo and behold, we'll see that Copilot actually exists in here. And I can create a draft form with Copilot. So in this case, I want to create a feedback form based on this presentation. So let's throw in some questions here, and I can hit generate. So I don't even need to provide questions. If I just ask it to create a feedback form, it'll just create its own set of questions. But if I want to be specific here, I want to follow a certain template, I can just throw the questions straight in, hit generate, and it takes, I would say 10 seconds or so normally. And you'll have those questions. There's the options to answer the questions. So it could be multiple choice, it could be a date picker, how many stars out of 5. So I imagine a lot of the people creating quizzes, they'd probably find this to be extremely valuable in the amount of time they save. So I'm just going to keep building this out here. And then you can jump in and change what was in here. So I don't really want to date pick it because I know when the event was run. So if you've not dealt with forms before, it's simple enough as creating a new question. I want a choice, get rid of that choice. And what's today's date? 31st of 10th, 2024. They're required. And I can actually, I'll copy that out. All right, and I can just remove that question there. So it's easy as that to manage. And the best part is I can go up here and edit the settings. I can set it so anyone can answer the form. And what I want to do here is customize the thank you message. And just in line with what we're trying to do here today with the team at VITG, we want to get some assessments happening. So I'll drop in the link and I'll say, thanks. Here's a link to our, well, I won't say free, our assessment. All right, so that's that set of things. And the last part is being able to collect the responses. So yes, you can create links. They're always fun. So I can copy that out. I make a shorter link. But the best part is I can make a QR code out of it. And you can whip your phones out now and scan that and the form will be live. Just before I let you do that, I will change this bit. Because we know it is the virtual IT group. It's required. And I can now get rid of this question here. I'll come back up here, grab that link and give you the QR code. So while you're frantically scanning your screens now, I'll pop this in the chat so you can have easy access to it. Righty, and that should be enough time for the surveys to happen. And afterwards, when you've reviewed the responses, you can open it up in Excel and start using Copilot in Excel to get analytics over the responses and get the sentiment from your audience as well. So we've got a response already here. So you can download a copy, open Excel online. You can boost responses, so you can get Copilot to help you write out email reminders and all sorts of things. Alrighty, well that's it for me on the demo side of things. I think I'll hand it back over to you, Nathan.
Thanks, Andrew. That was awesome. Loved watching the demos. I'm going to bring Will Thomas, principal consultant for Virtual IT Group, into the discussion now. As part of his role, Will serves as our virtual CIO in the business, and he's led many senior engagements, seeing him take on significant challenges for Virtual IT Group's largest clients. Will's expertise and leadership have earned him respect across our industry. And in saying that, Will, I'd like to ask, can you share with us your experience with Copilot?
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. So since the explosion of the use of or wanting to use AI and particularly Copilot over the last 6-7 months or so in business landscape, so we've had a good range of clients, ranging from just a handful of staff up to several hundred staff within an organization, going through the initial discovery phase and the adoption phase of testing with certain users, and even more so going full into the environment by applying Copilot licenses across all of the relevant staff and adjusting their security posture accordingly. And one of the main things that's come out of Copilot being the catalyst for it, as they go through and do the assessments with VITG, is understanding more about the data security landscape broadly across their industries and also for their own environments, and how they actually need to readjust that posture for the use of Copilot, and also just for good practice of cybersecurity uplift and protecting all of your specific data. So that being said, one of the main things that we've had to go through with these assessments is actually making sure that all of the sensitivity labels are applied properly against all of the files and folders within each of the document libraries for clients. So as it stands today, if you do want to apply Copilot licenses into your environment, you can do so without having to modify any of your license requirements. However, it is highly recommended not to do so for a lot of the reasons that Andrew mentioned earlier, where Copilot will be able to touch all of the data within your environment and provide responses that your employees and staff may not necessarily need to see. And also gives the opportunity, if you do have a breach in your environment, for that data to be collated in ways that could be then exfiltrated from your environment very quickly. What we need to do in these circumstances is actually classify the data properly with sensitivity labels, which can be done through certain security licensing uplift. It can also be achieved manually with business premium licensing. However, that can potentially be an enormous task actually going through that process, which is why we always recommend to add several security licenses onto either business premium or E3 licenses, or better yet, to actually move to E5 licensing, which includes all of the security outcomes that you would need to be able to classify all of your data's sensitivity for confidential files, restricting access to certain files through Copilot, but also logging all of the access of any of your data as it's touched by staff, as it's moved around the organization, and if it's moved externally from your environment as well, similar to the example that Andrew gave about an email containing personally identifiable data being sent out, but stopped before it was able to be sent.
Okay. So if you label a document as confidential, then it means that won't be read by Copilot?
Correct. So
okay.
That's right. So I mean, in the sense that if you wanted to go through and try and manually classify all of your data, you can do that with your business premium and E3 license without add-ons. However, that is an enormous task to do so, to actually go through and manually identify or classify which files are sensitive, have sensitive or personally identifiable data within your organization. Whereas the actual security add-ons or the E5 licensing will actually go through and automatically tag all of the files with standard sensitivity labels. It will then provide reports to the business to say these particular files contain personally identifiable data or sensitive data specific to your business, which you can train as we actually go through and set up this the additional security features. And that way it will effectively be omitted from search results within Copilot. The other thing it will do is also actually log the queries that are being created from Copilot and actually advise which files it is referencing the data from if you ever need to audit any of the queries that have come out in your environment. And that's not necessarily to say that people are looking for something malicious in the environment, or looking to do something malicious in the environment, but also in order to be able to train any of the queries, if you need to have staff polling regular queries within Copilot, to improve the accuracy as well. So that way it's not necessarily pulling results from a broad range of company files, which may not necessarily be accurate, but also just to make sure that the results that are being provided are relevant to the queries that are being asked.
Okay. There's a cyber risk then if a hacker was to get into the environment and without us labeling some of the bits with confidential, secure, private, sensitive, could they use it to quickly find things given the speed of Copilot that we've seen today?
Yes. So as with any cyber breach, the hacker will always be able to access files based on the person's account that they've used to get into the environment and their specific permissions, which means anything in their mailbox, anything in their OneDrive, anything that they have access to within SharePoint. And they'll also be able to use queries within Copilot to be able to pull data from all those sources in a much quicker way than you would if they were looking through the document libraries or emails manually. One thing to mention though as well in terms of actually going through and doing these assessments, Copilot has really become the catalyst of actually doing businesses really reviewing that data security posture and making assessments that we really need to make sure that we are securing our data properly. I mean, one thing that's been very convenient as part of the whole COVID exercise is that it's allowed people to work from anywhere in a very, very convenient way. They can almost work from any device. They can access all of the corporate resources from anywhere. However, a lot of businesses are still playing catch up in terms of actually securing the posture and making sure that only compliant devices can access that data, and also when that data is accessed, who's actually touching it and where it is moving around your network. So to your point as well, Nathan, around if somebody gets into the environment, the sensitivity labels help greatly in that if a company does have a breach and it becomes a notifiable breach and you have to then explain that to stakeholders, clients, auditors, external parties that files have been exfiltrated from the environment, it becomes a very costly exercise for businesses to actually then go through and manually determine which files have been touched or exfiltrated from the environment. With the Purview security features that get implemented, it's much easier to go through because all of the file contact is logged to say these files have been touched and these files have been exfiltrated from the network, and to be able to then accurately be able to provide that information to auditors or provide peace of mind to external parties and clients that their files have not been touched in the event of a breach.
Yeah, okay. So this speaks to the absolute importance of getting a readiness assessment on your environment to ensure that you've got the right security protocols then.
Yeah, correct. I mean, it's the most important thing because we can, Copilot can be deployed through licensing, but without putting in all of the controls and security around it, it's a big risk for organizations to be able to implement it without. It's the same way as you would if you were to put any other file mechanism or file sharing feature in your environment. You'd want to make sure that all of the security is correct around it. So what our teams are doing is, as we go through and do the assessments, is reviewing the types of data that your industry works with, ranking recommendations around how it should be configured, how all of the Purview features should be configured for protecting personally identifiable data, and training any specific sensitive data for your industry. So in terms of actually overlaying that component, we'll also recommend what licensing you should be adding to your environment. So generally speaking, E5 is the way to go in terms of getting all of the security features. You can put specific security add-ons for Business Premium or E3. However, by the time you add the additional licenses, the cost comparison is almost the same as moving to a full E5 license. And in also doing that, you'll get the security outcomes by remaining with Business Premium and E3. However, you'll get a significant number of additional features and licensed products with an E5 license that you wouldn't get by putting in the add-ons. So just as a couple of examples, some organizations, they may have users already using licenses such as Power BI Pro, Power Automate, or Microsoft Visio in the environment. All of these features are included in an E5 license. So there are some gains for companies where you can then absorb those add-on licenses that you're currently paying for within an E5 license, and then also be able to provide more functionality to the broader teams as well by giving, for example, the whole organization access to Power BI Pro through E5 licensing. And again, we'll make those recommendations as we actually go through and do the assessments within the environments to say, if you do have a lot of these add-on licenses because your industry needs to use these components, we can help you put that business case together to say that these will be the additional benefits outside of the data security and Copilot remediation requirements.
Okay. I noted Andrew dropped in chat the Entra ID P2 as well as those. We've got the Privacy Act.
Yes.
There's some things coming through there. Are you able to shed some light on data governance, transparency there?
Yeah, so I mean, it kind of plays into the same skew as what we mentioned around if you have a breach and being able to track all of your data, or be able to accurately say within your environment if you are holding personally identifiable data on anyone. So it's also just become part of compliance for a lot of regulatory bodies or for cyber insurance to actually say, are you holding personally identifiable data within your environment, or can you disclose? You'll need to disclose to your clients or to your stakeholders if you are. The use of the Purview security overlay will accurately allow you to be able to collate a list to say which files contain personally identifiable data, so that then you can apply the correct sensitivity labels to them, or move them to somewhere in a more secure environment. So for example, you could potentially look at outsourcing it to an ISO 27001 accredited environment, or accredit yourself if needed.
Okay. We could probably help in that regard with governance, risk, compliance.
Absolutely. The VRTG team has an extensive GRE arm that can assist with that.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thanks so much for your time. I'll introduce Andrew back into the chat. We've got about 10 minutes to wrap up with any questions that you might have. If you can drop them in the chat, we'll get through. I've got a couple that had come through earlier. Andrew, if you're there,
Yep.
Perfect. How does Copilot integrate with our existing tool set? It's a question. Yeah.
So like kind of discussed before, it's going to show up in your Microsoft 365 applications. So a lot of users will be using it on their desktop devices or their mobile devices. So if we are talking about, say, Windows, for example, you want to make sure that the applications are on the monthly or current update channel. So you're making sure that the latest updates are coming in rather quickly, but also it's because that build of Office or the Microsoft apps is the one that's compatible with Copilot. So once you have that set in place, a lot of businesses would have Microsoft Intune, for example, to manage that, so that they've got the right versioning and the right apps being pushed out, so that when they are assigned a Copilot license, it'll get the next update that pulls down will include the actual embedded chat experience in their application. So you get the Copilot chat window that we saw in the canvases as well. Within the web versions of those apps and services, as soon as you sign a license, I'd say give it up to a week and you'll start seeing the Copilot logo appear. So like in Teams, for example, or just in the office.com, you'll see Copilot starting to appear. And I guess from then on, you could look at other applications or tools that you may use through connectors. So Copilot Studio is one of those avenues you could look at. Introducing data sources from third-party databases on-prem if you're really desperate, and then be able to do other workflows based on your interactions with Copilot.
Okay. What does a successful implementation look like in a holistic view?
Yeah, so definitely adoption and change management is a huge piece here. So there are some tools that come with a Copilot license, but there are other really handy tools that come from separate licensing. So I want to point out the Viva Suite. So there are some applications in that that are really handy here. So the Viva Suite is the employee experience platform. So this has things like Viva Engage, which used to be Yammer. It's got Viva Connections. But importantly, Viva Amplify is for the people and culture, or the news spreaders in the business. So they'll have access to this tool that helps them create these campaigns that are part of the Copilot experience. So from day -30 or whatever, you can start building up what emails should be sent out to introduce that Copilot is coming. Here are some resources to get started with. And during the testing phase, you've got other messaging that you can relay as well. So things like SharePoint news posts, Viva Engaged posts, and other emails. So before, during, and a little bit after as well, you have access to create this content so that your users are going to be comfortable with that change, and be like when you are fully deployed with Copilot, everyone's going to know how to use it and they're going to have really effective experiences with it. And yes, with the security compliance piece as well, if that's done hand in hand, then it's going to be that comprehensive success. Especially with those metrics I mentioned before, so identifying those pain points, because we always talk about how much time have we saved doing not doing this stuff by using Copilot. So you've saved 10 hours a week. That's already, it adds up pretty quickly in terms of how much value you get back out of it to spend elsewhere.
Yeah, for sure. Andrew, could you talk to the use of Copilot and how to support our ESG goals?
Yeah, so from a, I guess, environmental, sustainability, and governance point of view, you can you can leverage Copilot. Just even in just asking it advice. So I wasn't too savvy on the acronym before. You can ask Copilot, what does this mean? What are the things I can target in my workplace to kind of address that? So if I want to be more sustainable and environmentally friendly, it can give you some hints and tips around maybe turning off lights that you don't use, or if it's anything around mental well-being in the workplace, it will give you some examples of what services out there like EAP, mental well-being, the lots of it, and you don't need to necessarily spend all that time researching this, and you can create internal, I guess, collateral, so posters and things around the ESG points as well.
That's brilliant. We haven't had any questions come in. I might leave it open for another few seconds. But thank you so much for your time today, Andrew. It's been brilliant for me. I'm sure for everyone.
Been a pleasure, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Looks like we've got a hand up. We want to unmute this person.
You got a hand up.
I'll allow the mic. So to come off mute, if you'd like to ask your question or pop it in chat.
Yeah, look, I just wanted to note, I can't actually access the chat. I don't know if that's the same with anyone else, but it might be why you're not getting any questions.
Oh, thanks, Maggie.
Just the other thing I quickly wanted to ask, I've missed the first 10 minutes, apologies, but is Autopilot available as a free version, did you say, Andrew?
So Copilot, there's a free web version of Microsoft Copilot. That is the one that you go to copilot.microsoft.com to access. We heavily suggest signing into a account, preferably a work account, so that you get the protections around that interaction, so that any information you put in doesn't accidentally get used as training material or leaked out into the public domain. But that is a good starting point to get familiar with prompting and chatting with Copilot before it rolls out in the business.
Great. Thanks, Maggie.
Cool. Do you want this next slide up? Nath?
I'm just going through. Next slide. Yeah, that would be great. If you can, we've got the Copilot readiness slide up. I might drop. I think all I can see is us highlighted, Andrew. But it would be great if anyone is interested in the readiness assessment. If you can capture that QR code that's on the screen at this stage, and we'll reach back out to you very shortly to discuss when and how we can implement that in your environment. Also, thanks, Will, for joining us in your busy day. It's great to have you along.
No problem. Thanks for inviting me.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today, and hope you have a happy Halloween. Cheers for now.
Thanks, everyone.